Hello everyone, welcome to the session on understanding the index lifecycle for a successful deployment. I'm Varun Velamuri, Senior Software Engineer in the Global Secondary Indexing team at Couchbase. Myself, along with my colleague Amit Kulkarni, will take you through this presentation today. As we all know, the index service is used as a background supporting service for ensuring optimal query performance. This makes the performance of index service critical for achieving high scan throughput and low latency scans. When setting up index service in the cluster and deploying indexes on the index service, the users are left with a variety of choices that can impact the performance of index service. In this talk, we'll walk you through some of those points, highlighting the overview of index service architecture, some important factors that affect the index service performance, how load balancing of indexes across multiple indexer nodes is achieved during the index creation phase, how high availability of index data is achieved using index replicas, how the load of a single index can be distributed across multiple indexer nodes using the index partitioning scheme, how index scan works, and what happens under the hood for index metadata backup and restore. Let us start with a high-level overview of index service architecture. The index service is comprised of a supervisor process running on the index service node and projector process running on the data service node. The projector process takes the responsibility of managing the DCP streams with the data service and forward the data that is relevant to the indexes on the index service node. The supervisor process coordinates between all the commands that are received from the query service, the incoming data that is received from all the projector processes in the cluster, and manages the storage for all the indexes that are residing on the index service node. The index supervisor, also referred to as the indexer process, accepts DDL and select commands from all the query services in the cluster. It hosts a query put server to listen to these commands, and upon receiving a command, it would forward these commands to a DDL or query processing unit. When a DDL is received, the indexer process would update its bookkeeping layer with information related to the DDL and send a control message to all the projectors in the cluster through projector client. For example, when a create index DDL is received, indexer would update its bookkeeping layer with information like the name of index that is getting created, the bucket on which the index is getting created, and then the index definition. And it would forward a control message asking projectors to open DCP streams with the bucket on which the index is getting created. When a select query is received, indexer would retrieve the information that is relevant to the select query from the storage layer and respond back to the caller with the information requested. Indexer also maintains a data port server to receive the payload that comes from all the projectors in the cluster. Upon receiving the payload, indexer would update its bookkeeping layer and flush the payload to the storage layer. The payload that comes from projector contains the ID of the document, list of index IDs, index keys, and operation type. And if the data service streams a document doc123, then the payload would contain the document ID as doc123, the index IDs as the list of IDs that indexer maintains for each of these index. The index keys would be the values of the secondary fields on which the index is defined, and then the type of operation would be insert. If the document is deleted, then the type of operation would be delete and the index keys would be empty. In the next slide, we shall see how projector acts based on the control messages from indexer, and we'll see how it generates the payload from the document that is streamed by the data service. The projector process is responsible for managing the DCP streams with the data service, and all stream management operations at projector happen based on the control request from indexer. Projector maintains a server to listen to all the control requests from indexer, and based on the request, it either opens a DCP stream or closes a DCP stream. Internally, projector maintains separate streams and initializes a separate set of queues for each indexer node in the cluster. This is done to make sure that the performance of one indexer will not impact the performance of other indexer nodes in the cluster. Also, because projector maintains separate streams for each indexer, the control requests from indexers can be evaluated simultaneously. For example, one indexer node can send an open stream message for a bucket, while other indexer node can send closed stream message for the same bucket. The internal set of queues initialized by projector are used for document processing. Projector maintains the list of indexes residing on each of the indexer nodes in the cluster. When a document is streamed by the data service through DCP, the projector would evaluate this document against all the index definitions that are residing on the node, extracts the keys that are relevant to the index, encodes the keys, and forwards the payload to indexer. Because of this, only the information that is relevant to the indexes on the indexer node is sent from projector to indexer. and the network bandwidth can be saved significantly by this scheme. The router component within projector takes care of forwarding this payload to all the indexer nodes in the cluster. The factors that influence index service performance can be divided into three categories: system-driven factors, application-driven factors, and data-driven factors. System-driven factors are related to the hardware configuration of the node on which index service is running, and these factors limit the amount of hardware resources the index service can consume. These factors include the memory quota, the CPU quota, the disk I/O bandwidth of the storage device on the node at which index service is running, the network bandwidth between the index service nodes and other nodes in the cluster. Application-driven factors are related to how the applications makes use of the indexes deployed on the cluster. These factors include the storage mode that is set to maintain the indexes, the number of indexes that are built, and the type of index. For example, whether the index is a partitioned index or a non-partitioned index. Data-driven factors are related to the amount of data that has to be processed to maintain and manage the indexes. Data-driven factors include the number of documents in the bucket, the size of the document, the size of the indexed key. When multiple indexes are to be built, the policy towards building the indexes, whether the indexes are built in batches or whether the indexes are built individually. Even though these factors are classified in different categories, most of these factors are tightly coupled together. For example, setting a memory quota depends on the storage mode that is chosen, and storage mode depends on the number of indexes that are being built, the size of the indexed key, and the number of documents in the bucket. In the next set of slides, we'll go through each of these factors individually and see how these factors impact the performance of index service. Memory quota is one of the key system-driven factors that influences the performance of index service to a great extent. Memory quota determines the upper limit on the memory that can be consumed by indexer process. When configuring the memory quota, we recommend to cap it at less than 90% of RAM size in order to make sure that the other services running on the node are not impacted by the memory availability. Typically, more the memory quota, the better it is for indexer. This is because indexer can hold more index data in memory, and therefore retrieval of this index data becomes faster when it resides in memory. Choosing the right memory quota depends on the storage mode that is chosen to maintain the indexes, the amount of index data that the indexer node is supposed to hold, and the type of scans that the indexes are expected to serve. For example, full index scans would be faster if the index data can entirely reside in memory. The index storage mode is decided when setting up the index service in the cluster. Users can choose between two storage modes for the index service from the settings page on UI. These storage modes are standard global secondary and memory optimized. Standard global secondary supports data greater than memory scenario. That means when the index data of all the indexes is more than the memory available for indexer process, indexer would distribute the index data between memory and disk. Part of the index data is maintained in memory and the other part is maintained on disk. This storage mode uses Plasma as storage subsystem for enterprise edition and ForestDB as storage subsystem for community edition. In the rest of the presentation, we would focus only on Plasma as the storage subsystem in standard global secondary storage mode. The memory optimized storage mode is an enterprise edition only feature which has a strong requirement that the index data of all the indexes has to fit in the memory. We will see what happens if the index data doesn't fit in the memory in the next set of slides. One thing to note is that once the storage mode is set, it cannot be changed without failing over all the nodes hosting index service in the cluster. In memory optimized storage mode, all the index data is actively maintained in an in-memory lock-free skip list. The lock-free skip list is designed to be highly concurrent in nature and can easily handle large number of concurrent accesses by multiple threads. The leaf-level nodes in the skip list contain all the indexed keys in sorted order. Each index maintains an instance of this lock-free skip list to store all the data that is relevant to the index. In memory optimized storage, if the indexer process RSS reaches 95% of the configured memory quota, then the indexer process would enter a pause state. In pause state, the data path will be blocked. This means any changes that happen to the documents while the indexer is in pause state will not be processed by the indexer immediately. Only drop index DDL is supported in the pause state, and the create and build index would fail. Indexer moves out of the pause state only if the RSS comes below 80% of the memory quota. Any session consistent scans that arrive at the indexer while it is in pause state can take long time to respond back, or they can possibly time out. When deciding the memory quota for indexer process in memory optimized storage mode, the users have to make an accurate estimation of the amount of index data that will reside on the indexer node. Otherwise, a mismatch in calculation can leave indexer in pause state for a very long time. The memory optimized storage mode is not memory only storage mode. This is because periodically indexer would persist all the index data to disk. When there is a service restart or rollback message received from the data service, indexer would use this information on disk to recover the index data. This process is called disk snapshotting, and we'll see the advantages of this process in later slides. Standard global secondary is the other storage mode that is available for index service. It supports data greater than memory scenarios. The plasma storage engine, which is used as the storage subsystem for standard global secondary storage mode, is organized as a two-layered architecture, a top level in-memory skip list, and a group of plasma pages in the bottom layer. All the index data that is given to the plasma storage instance is stored as a sorted list of key value pairs in the plasma page. The in-memory skip list is built as a bookkeeping layer on top of plasma page, where it maintains the high and low values of each page, and the leaf level nodes of the skip list contain reference to the plasma page. When a key has to be searched in this plasma instance, first the in-memory skip list is traversed to identify the plasma page that could possibly contain the key, and then the sorted list of key value pairs is searched in plasma page for a match. In DGM scenarios, the least recently used plasma pages are evicted to disk. The in-memory skip list always resides in memory and it is never evicted to disk. The leaf nodes of the skip list always contain a reference to the page meta, and when a plasma page is evicted to disk, the location of the page on disk is updated in the page meta. When a key has to be read from a plasma instance, and the key exists in a page that is not resident in the memory, the plasma instance will use the location of the page on disk to fetch the page into memory. The resident ratio of an index, which determines the amount of index data that is available in memory, is calculated based on the number of plasma pages that reside in memory. This is because when multiple scans happen on the indexer, the scans can spread across multiple pages and multiple scans can target different pages. Fetching a page from disk can take time compared to having the page data in memory and serving the scan from the in-memory page. So having at least 20% of the plasma pages in memory should be able to serve the scans with decent performance. When the index data of all the indexes can reside in memory, then the standard global secondary mode requires more memory quota than the memory optimized storage mode. And we'll see why this is the case in the next set of slides. For each index that gets created, indexer process maintains two storage instances. One instance is called as the back index, which contains a mapping between the document ID and the indexed key. The second instance is called the main index, which contains all the indexed keys in sorted order. The index data is stored along with the document ID in the main index. All the scans that hit the indexer will be served using the main index. To understand the need for back index, we need to understand how a document is streamed from the data service. Consider a document, doc123, with multiple fields, name and age. When the age value of this document is updated from 49 to 50, the data service would stream the new version of the document to index service. The data service does this to ensure optimal DCP streaming performance. When index service receives this document with new values, it cannot deduce the old value that has already been indexed for this document without traversing its entire list of keys. For example, in this case, the indexer has to search in all the indexed keys in the main index and then check if the document ID that exists with the indexed key corresponds to the document that has been streamed by the data service, and then deduce the value 49 that has been indexed for this document. As traversing entire list of keys is a very costly operation, indexer solves this problem by maintaining a back index. When there is a document update, indexer uses back index to deduce the already indexed values. When a document is streamed to the index service, the indexer process would check if there is any indexed value for this document in the back index. It looks up in the back index map to see if there is any value that is already indexed for this document. If it doesn't find any, then it would insert this document into the back index storage. When a new version of the document is received, it would again look up the back index and then finds the already indexed value for this document. In this case, if an index is created on the age field, when it is first streamed, it would insert doc123 and 49 in the back index. When this document is updated, it would check that the value 49 is already present in the back index. It would delete this value from the main index. It updates back index to contain the mapping between doc123 and 50, the new value that is sent with the document, and then it inserts 50 into the main index. The back index storage instance also exists for memory optimized storage, and this is not storage mode dependent problem. With memory optimized storage mode, all the index data resides in memory. So the back index will just maintain a pointer to the location of index data in main index. In memory optimized storage mode, instead of storing the value of the indexed key, the back index would directly point to the location of the indexed key in the main index. This means that with memory optimized storage mode, the index key does not have to be saved twice, as against Plasma storage engine, where the indexed key has to be stored twice. In the Plasma storage engine, as the Plasma pages get persisted to disk, it cannot maintain pointers, because if the back index in Plasma maintains a pointer to the page in main index, and if the page gets persisted to disk, then the pointer points to an incorrect location, which can lead to incorrect results. Coming to disk IO bandwidth, multiple operations in Plasma storage engine are tightly coupled with the disk IO bandwidth, especially when the indexes are in DGM scenario. A read on an evicted Plasma page requires the page to be fetched into memory, and this incurs both read and write bandwidth. Write bandwidth is incurred because when a page is fetched into memory, existing pages in memory will be evicted to disk. Index scans and index build catch-up will trigger read operation on a page. When there is an index build catch-up, the back index that is maintained by the indexer has to fetch the old value that has been indexed for the document from the disk if the page doesn't exist in memory, and this incurs the read operation on page. Also, structural modifications to page like split, merge, and compaction of a page requires the evicted pages to be fetched into memory. Additionally, Plasma maintains these pages on disk as log structured storage. When these pages get relocated on disk due to the structural modifications, the older versions of the pages are to be invalidated, and this will also incur some disk IO bandwidth. When using Plasma storage engine, especially when there are large indexes in the cluster and the system is expected to enter DGM mode, we recommend a minimum disk IO bandwidth of 500 megabytes per second for optimal performance. One other contributor to disk IO bandwidth is disk snapshotting, and we shall cover that in the next slide. For each index that gets created, the indexer process maintains a copy of the entire index data on disk, and this copy is referred to as the disk snapshot. The advantage of having a disk snapshot is that when there is a process crash or restart, the indexer process can rebuild the index from the disk storage rather than streaming the entire data from the data service again. For each index, two disk snapshots are actively maintained by indexer. Each disk snapshot is created in an interval of 10 minutes. So when there is a process crash or restart, indexer would first retrieve the index data from the disk snapshot and then rebuild the index with all the document changes that have happened in the data service after the disk snapshot is persisted. So only 10 minutes worth of index data needs to be rebuilt. Indexer manages disk snapshots differently for different storage modes. With memory optimized storage mode, indexer maintains two full disk snapshots. That means that the entire index data of all the indexes needs to be persisted every 10 minutes. So if there are 10 indexes on a node and the cumulative size of all the indexes is 100 gigabytes, then every 10 minutes, the entire 100 gigabytes will be returned to disk. On disk over network systems, where multiple services are running and the network bandwidth is not sufficient to handle the snapshotting process, then the other service can perform suboptimally during the snapshotting process. The Plasma storage engine maintains two incremental disk snapshots for every index that gets created. With incremental snapshots, only the data that has been updated since the last disk snapshot will be updated in the latest disk snapshot. So there is no need to persist the entire index data every 10 minutes. As the snapshotting is incremental in nature, the Plasma has a relatively less disk IO requirement compared to memory optimized storage mode. As the snapshotting is incremental in nature for Plasma, the IO requirement for disk snapshotting is relatively less as compared to the memory optimized storage mode. CPU quota is another system-driven factor that is very important in determining the performance of index service. The indexer and projector processes in the index service are designed to be highly concurrent in nature, and therefore they scale well with the number of cores available on the node on which they are running. CPU quota determines the number of cores of CPU these processes can use simultaneously. Typically, larger the CPU quota, the better it is for indexer process. Users can configure the number of cores indexer process can use simultaneously by changing the indexer thread settings on UI. By default, this setting will have a value of 0, which means that the indexer process is allowed to use all the cores that are available on the system. If there are multiple CPU intensive processes running on a node on which the index service is going to get deployed, then the users may have to redistribute the services to achieve better performance. The projector process, which does the job of evaluating an incoming document and extracting the secondary keys that are relevant to all the index definitions from the document, is also highly concurrent in nature and a CPU intensive process. By default, the CPU quota of projector process is capped at 25% of the available CPU cores on data service node. This is done to limit the impact the projector process can have on other processes like memcached, which are critical for data service performance. One thing to note is that when the index definition is complex, involving multiple substring evaluations and subdocument parsing, the projector process tends to take more CPU. All the indexes that are created using the option differ build :true in the with clause can be built using the build index command. The build index command accepts multiple index names that belong to a bucket and builds all these indexes together. We would recommend to build multiple indexes in batches because the documents are streamed from the data service only once for all the indexes, and this would avoid restreaming of the documents again and again from the data service. If the indexes were to be built individually, then the entire set of documents for the bucket have to be streamed from the data service once for each index, which won't be an optimal choice for achieving better performance. When using Plasma storage engine, we recommend an average key size of 1 kilobytes for all the fields in the index. If the average key size goes beyond this limit, then we recommend to refactor the queries and index definitions to accommodate smaller key sizes. This is because with large key sizes, Plasma can have adverse impact on performance. The in-memory skip list layer in Plasma consumes more memory with large key sizes because the skip list layer maintains the higher low values of the indexed keys in the Plasma page. Therefore, the memory quota of indexer will be filled faster. The disk I/O bandwidth can get easily saturated with large key sizes. Also, Plasma would require more pages to maintain all the keys. That means that page overheads will be more, and this will indirectly contribute to the memory quota. With memory optimized storage mode, since all the data is held in memory, the impact of large keys is limited as compared to Plasma. Summarizing our discussion, we have covered about the memory quota, CPU quota, and disk I/O bandwidth in the system-driven factors, and what are the recommended limits for these factors. Though we have not explicitly covered the network bandwidth has to be chosen such that it can handle the mutation rate that is coming from all the projectors to indexer node. Also, with disk snapshotting on memory optimized storage systems, and if the disk is over network, we saw how it can impact the network bandwidth of the system. We covered the storage mode options that are available for indexer, and we saw how each of the storage modes can impact performance. We have not covered the number of indexes in application driven factor, but this factor is related to the amount of index data that is maintained by the indexer, and this amount of index data is used to make a decision on the memory quota and storage mode. The advantages of having a partition index will be covered in the future slides by my colleague Amit. In the data-driven factors, we have covered about the size of the indexed key and the advantages of building index in batches. We have not explicitly covered about the number of documents in the bucket, but if there are more number of documents in the bucket, that means that there is more index data, and this in turn relates to the memory quota and then the storage mode decisions that the user has to take. Coming to the size of the document, projector evaluates each document that is streamed against all the index definitions, and if the size of the document is large, and this can affect the ingestion rate from projectors to indexer. Now I'll hand over the talk to my colleague Amit. Thank you.
Thank you, Varun. Hello, everybody. I'm Amit Kulkarni. I'm working as a lead software engineer in global secondary indexing. I have been with Couchbase for 2.5 years now. I will be taking you through the rest of the presentation. Let's start with index creation. Index creation happens in two stages. First stage is where index placement is decided. If there are multiple indexer nodes in the cluster, the host indexer node for this new incoming index will be decided in the stage 1, and then the corresponding index metadata will be persisted on that particular node's local metadata store. If you see in the diagram, there are multiple indexer nodes, and each indexer node will have its own local metadata store. The second stage is where index will be built. The index build happens directly from data service, where the DCP protocol is used for data streaming, and index service will get the data from data service, and corresponding index entries will get created. Now let's talk about index planner. Index planner decides the index placement based on the live load in the cluster. It looks at all indexes that are there on all indexer nodes in the cluster. It will calculate the load on each of the indexer nodes, And then based on the estimation, it will calculate the load generated by the new index as well. Okay? Because for the new index, the values of the load parameters will not be available. Then based on all the load related information, it will choose one particular host indexer node for the new index that is being created. To look at more details of index planner, you can follow this link that is displayed on the screen. Now let's see how user can drive the index placement. So if user wants to place an index on a specific indexer node, user can make use of with clause and pass some value to node's parameter at the time of creation of an index. So if only one node is provided at the time of creation of an index will always get created on that node. But if more than one node is specified, index planner will look at all the nodes that are specified in the list of nodes that is given by the user and choose the least loaded node from that list. Index planner will not look at other nodes that are present in the cluster. Now let's talk about index replicas. Index replicas provide high availability as well as load balancing for GSI indexes. Basically, GSI indexes use master-master replication. What it means is all replicas are masters. They are active all the time and they can serve scans. Each index replica is built separately. What it means is if there are multiple replicas of the same index, they talk to data service separately and using DCP protocol, they build themselves. Okay. There is no replica to replica communication. Okay, or one index to another index communication. All the replicas can serve scans. This leads to load balancing across the multiple scans. And replicas of the same index are always placed on different indexer nodes. This gives us the high availability that is required. The way in which one can create replicas is with the help of create index statement using with clause. If the num replica parameter is specified and the value of num replica is greater than 0, then that means those many number of replicas will be created. In this particular example, num replica 1 means total 2 index instances will be created, one with replica ID 0 and another with replica ID 1. And internally, those 2 replicas will be placed on 2 different indexer nodes. This diagram gives an illustration of how replicas are built separately. So in this particular example, there are 3 replicas, replica 0, 1 and 2, which are located on 3 different indexer nodes. Each indexer node will make a request to data service node to stream the data using DCP service. Those requests happen completely independent of each other or separately. These indexer nodes do not talk to each other. They do not know when the replica is being built on the other node. Basically, the communication between indexer node and the data node is completely separate from other indexer nodes. Now let's see how load balancing happens with the help of index replicas. So in this diagram, we can see a query node and 3 different indexer nodes. Each indexer node is hosting one index replica. So whenever there are multiple requests for the same index that are coming in, there is a logic to do uniformly random distribution across all the replicas of the index. And with the help of that uniform distribution, each indexer node will get equal number of requests and the load in the cluster will be distributed. Now let's see how index replicas provide high availability in Couchbase cluster. Let's take this example where there is one query node and 3 indexer nodes. So if one of the indexer node goes down, which was hosting one of the replicas, at the time of serving the query node will come to know that a particular query will not be served by the indexer node 3. So it redirects that query to indexer node 2 or indexer node 1. In this particular case, there is again uniform randomness in distributing the queries across these two indexer nodes. There are no manual steps that will be required to ensure this. This happens completely automatically. More on this will be covered in the later slides. Now let's take a look at how index replicas are aware of server groups. So basically, Couchbase server provides a feature of server groups where user can map nodes to server groups, and each server groups represents an availability zone. What it means is, if one server group goes down, where all the nodes in that particular server group can fail, the other server group can be available at the same time. So at the time of index replica distribution, indexing service ensures that index replicas are always distributed across all server groups. In this particular example, there are two server groups. Each server group has two indexer nodes each. And when placing the replicas, index service chooses one replica to be placed on indexer node 1. The second replica will never be placed on indexer node 2. It will always go to indexer node 3 or indexer node 4 based on the load. So when the entire server group fails, the query node, as earlier, will route all the queries to the indexer node 1, and without any manual steps, the query availability is guaranteed. Now let's go into the details of index partitioning. Index partitioning is useful to distribute the load across multiple indexer nodes. The load can be generated by data ingestion, that is index build, or the load can be generated by index scans. If there are multiple nodes in the cluster, multiple partitions of an index will get placed on different nodes in the cluster, and hence the load will be distributed as shown in this particular diagram. Partition indexes are also helpful in improving the performance of the scans with the help of partition elimination. We will come back to partition elimination in the later slides. On the screen, you can see a create index command, which creates a partition index where there is a partition by clause that is used. And as the indexes are hash partitioned, it takes a hash function, and the parameter passed to hash function is meta ID, which is document ID. And the hash algorithm used is CRC32. Now let's take a look at how partitions are distributed across multiple nodes. Let's look at this particular example. So in this case, let's assume that there are 3 different indexer nodes, and there are already created 4 indexes that are there in the cluster: index 1, index 2, index 3, and index 4. All of these 4 indexes have only one partition, that is partition 0. And now when we want to create a new partition index, let's say its name is index 5, we will create it, and the load will be distributed across all the nodes in the cluster uniformly. When I say load, it's not just the load that is generated by that partition index, but it's the entire load generated by all the indexes. So if you see here, index 4 box is a little bit bigger, so it is generating more load than other indexes. And at the time of index creation, we assume that the load generated by all the partition of the same index is same. So when we distribute the partitions across node 1, node 2, and node 3, we will end up distributing partitions of node 5, that is all the 4 partitions of index 5, in such a way that the load across the nodes is distributed evenly. Now let's see how one should choose a good partition key. Basically, aim of partition index is to distribute the load across multiple partitions and hence across multiple nodes. So if the chosen partition key is not very good, then the index key distribution will not be uniform. And if that happens, the load distribution will not be uniform. So if a wrong partition key is chosen, it can lead to a partition skew. Let's take an example of a user table, okay, where user ID is primary key in that particular table. In that case, user ID as a partition key is a good choice because each row will have its own user ID, and hence all the rows or all the documents will get distributed across multiple partitions uniformly. On the other hand, username is not a good partition key because some of the names are more common, and hence there will be more number of rows of the same username than the other, and hence there will be some partition skew. As I said earlier, partition skew can lead to non-uniform load distribution across multiple indexer nodes, and that's not the reason why we have created partitioned index. One more thing to know about partition keys is partition key needs to be immutable. What it means is, if there is an update to the partition key, that, or rather there should not be any update to partition key, because if there is an update to partition key, it is possible that index key will move from one partition to another. And in that case, because this is a distributed system, the scans can get inconsistent results. So to avoid that, we recommend that index or rather partition keys should always be immutable. Now let's go into the details of how index scans work. So this is a very high level diagram. The user app will directly talk to the query process that is running on query node. Within the query node, there is a component library which is called index scan client. This index scan client is responsible to talking to indexer node. If there are multiple indexer nodes, it will talk to all or a subset of indexer nodes depending on the requirement. Corresponding indexer nodes will return the scan results to the index scan client, and then the query node returns that response to the user application. In the further slides, we will dig deeper into all those components that we are seeing here. Let's go into the details of index scan client. This diagram shows the steps performed by index scan client while serving a scan request. So query node or the query process will choose one particular index to serve a scan, and it will forward the request to index scan client. On receiving the request, index scan client first chooses an equivalent index. So if there are more than one indexes with different name, but everything else same, for example, all the fields and the order in which these fields are mentioned while creating the index, if these things are same, then the index is called as an equivalent index. Now, index scan client will choose an equivalent index to serve a scan. This step is useful in deciding or in uniformly distributing the scan load across multiple indexes. The second step that happens here is, after choosing an index replica is chosen. So in this particular diagram, we can see that there are 3 indexer nodes and total 3 replicas. Okay. So in the second step, with the help of uniform randomness and by considering the staleness aspect, an index replica is chosen. In this example, replica 2 is stale. A replica can go stale either because it is slow or because of the rollback. If this thing happens, index, or in other words, if one of the replica falls behind the other replicas by a certain amount, then index scan client can choose to ignore that replica for a particular scan request, and it will choose from the remaining set of replicas. In this example, the index scan client will choose only from replica ID 0 or replica ID 1, ignoring replica ID 2. Once the replica is chosen, then the scan request will be sent to the corresponding indexer node. In this particular example, if there are multiple requests coming in, they will be distributed across indexer node 1 and indexer node 2 until replica 2 becomes active again. Okay, and if index for a particular request, if index scan client has chosen indexer node 1, and at the time of sending the request, it identifies the network partition between query node and indexer node 1, then it will automatically retry the request with indexer node 2. This helps in handling failure scenarios or error scenarios without any human interaction. Okay. Auto reply with the replicas is tried until all replicas exhaust. And if while the scan was ongoing and while some results were returned from the indexer node to query node, and then the error happens, then in that particular case, scan is termed as a partial scan, in which case auto retry doesn't happen. Now let's take a look at how scans work on indexer node. On indexer node, the scan processing is divided into two stages. First is the source stage and the second is the write stage. In the first stage, when a new request is received on indexer side or new scan request is received, it can have one or more scan ranges and they can be overlapping, and then there is a possibility of optimization. So if there is a possibility of optimization, these scan ranges will be merged or split so that the target ranges are optimized. The next step that happens is the scan request is forwarded to index storage, where the scan filters will be applied. After applying filters, the results will be returned to the source stage, and if the scan request contains any group by or aggregate functions, those will be applied. And then the final results will be ready. Then the results will be sent to the write stage. Write stage is responsible for sending the results to the query node while writing it to the socket. By default, index can take up to 2 minutes, and after 2 minutes, if the scan is not finished, the scan timeout error happens. If you have some scans that take more than 2 minutes, you can change scan and timeout to a larger value. The setting is displayed on the screen. It's also noteworthy that index scan storage makes use of MVCC. So it is possible while doing a scan, there are actively some changes are happening to the index scan storage. So to ensure scan stability or scan stability, MVCC snapshots are created and scan requests are always served with the help of a stable MVCC snapshot. Now let's see how scans work for partitioned indexes. So user app will send a request to the query node, and query node, if it identifies that the request is for an index which is a partitioned index, then it will perform scatter gather operation. In this example, there are two indexer nodes and the index has 4 partitions, and the index partitions are distributed across 2 different indexer nodes. So query node will send the same request to both the indexer nodes concurrently. These indexer nodes will process the request and return the scan results to the query node, where query node will be waiting on the results in the gather stage. If order by clause is specified, then in the gather stage, the results will be sorted and then only returned to the user app. But if the order by clause is not specified, the results will be returned to the user app as and when they become available from the indexer nodes. Okay, they will just be forwarded to the user app. In this case, the sort order will be ignored. To add more details to scatter gather, let's take this example. So what happens in this case is scatter gather happens twice, once on query node and once on indexer nodes as well. So if there is an indexer node which is hosting more than one partition, it will perform scatter gather within itself and then it will return the results to the query. If there is an indexer node which is hosting only one partition, then for that node, scatter gather won't be required. As I was saying earlier, partition elimination can be used to improve scan performance. Let's take an example and see how partition elimination can help us in improving scan performance. Let's assume that there is a table, user table, and we have created index on username. Now, if we want to get results for 3 specific users, then we can specify equality filters on username. And if the partition index is created on the username, then in that case, on query node, we can identify that because there are equality filters, the scan should go only to the 3 partitions and not more than that. Here there is a prerequisite that the equality filters have to be there on a partition key. So in this example, query node decides to send the request only to indexer node 1 and indexer node 3 because only partition 1, 2 and 5 need to be scanned. On indexer node 1, there are 2 partitions that are being scanned, so scatter gather will happen on that node. But on indexer node 3, even though there are 2 partitions, scan is only being done on partition number 5. So the results, so there is no need for scatter gather on that node. On query node, results will be gathered and the results will be returned to the user application. Now let's talk about the consistency model that is exposed by Couchbase server. So any scan request that user makes can either be a non-bounded request or it can be a consistent scan request. In case of non-bounded request, indexer node will serve that request with any snapshot that is available at the time of serving the request. But in case of consistent scan, indexer node has to wait for consistent snapshot to be available before it can start returning the results. The first consistency option we will look at is @+. @+ request consistency is at least as latest as the request timestamp. What it means is it can be the timestamp that is available on the storage side can be ahead of the request timestamp, but it cannot be behind the request timestamp. Now, the request timestamp will be carried with the scan request itself. The client can get the request timestamp by talking to the data service. Data service, whenever there is an update to the data service, the timestamp, the request timestamp will be updated, or the data service timestamp will be updated, and client can make use of that as a request timestamp. On the indexer node, once the consistent snapshot is available, it can start returning the scan result. This @+ consistency model can be used for read your own write type of requirements. Now let's talk about the second consistency model that is exposed by Couchbase server, which is called request+. In case of request+, unlike @+, scan request is not going to carry any request timestamp with it. On the other hand, indexer node, when it receives the request, it will have to get current timestamp from the data service. So it will wait for data service to, it will make a request to the data service, it will wait for timestamp to be received from the data service, and then it will wait again for a consistent snapshot to be available. Once the consistent snapshot becomes available, the scan results will be returned to the user. Now let's take a look at how index metadata can be backed up and restored with the help of CB Backup Manager tool. CB Backup Manager can make a request to one of the indexer nodes to get the backup metadata. This request will be received by one of the indexer nodes, and that indexer node will perform scatter gather and get the local index metadata from all the indexer nodes. Once entire metadata is collected, that indexer node will return the response to the CB Backup Manager. Now let's take a look at how index metadata is restored with the help of CB Backup Manager. CB Backup Manager will send a restore request to one of the indexer nodes in the cluster. Okay. On that indexer node, workflow for restore handler will get invoked. The first step is to find the indexes to restore. If there are indexes that are present in the backup metadata as well as present on the target cluster, then those indexes will not get restored. Then the restore handler will find the indexer host mapping. So there will be a mapping that is built from source indexers to the target indexer nodes. This mapping will later help in placing the indexes on corresponding indexer nodes, and this gives us the best possible estimation for a better index load distribution for the target cluster. Once the index placement is decided, then corresponding create index requests will be sent to the corresponding indexer nodes, and the index metadata will be persisted in the local index metadata store. There are some manual steps that are required after a restore of index metadata. As the name suggests, only index metadata will be restored, so indexes will have to be built explicitly as they are not built automatically. But before starting to build the index, there is a prerequisite of checking if movement of index is required. It is possible that the target index placement decided by the indexing service is not optimal, because index service will not know about the index information about the index like scan rate, data ingestion rate, index sizes before the time. So if user feels that the target placement is not optimal, then they should move the index and get the optimal target index placement. The index movement will be instantaneous as only metadata is being moved. Once index movement is done, the indexes can be built, and then there is a single command to build all unbuilt indexes for a bucket. This command is displayed on the screen. This brings us to the end of the presentation. Thank you for listening. Varun and I will be available to answer all of your questions. So if you have any questions, please post them below the video. Thank you.